It's been a busy 24 hours of NASCAR news, guys. We have a lot to talk about. Suarez was officially announced as the driver of the 96. NASCAR is tweaking the stages for this year, of course. And Jeff Hammond is back as a crew chief. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. Yes, I know I'm in another new recording space. I'm just bouncing all around my apartment, wherever I can find space at this point. But look, I got a die-cast car back on display. You guys like that, right? I love when you guys comment about how much I move around. Eric moves more than someone in witness protection program. Eric changes recording spaces more than NASCAR changes the aero package. Those are good, those are clever. All right, but enough fun and games, let's get serious. We have a lot of things to cover on this show. I'm just gonna touch on a few things. There's a few things that don't require my full attention, don't require me to dive entirely into them. So we're gonna just gloss over a few things here, and then I wanna talk about a couple other big revelations that we've had in the last day or so. But let's start with some good news on the NASCAR sponsorship front. Alex Bowman fans, where are you guys at? I know there's a lot of you there. Earlier this morning, as a matter of fact, Hendrick Motorsports revealed Alex Bowman's new primary sponsors for 26 races this year. With this announcement, he now pretty much has a fully funded schedule of races. This is huge because with Nationwide leaving after the end of last season, those 26 races were left wide open. That's a huge chunk of the schedule, and as of last week, really didn't sound like a lot of progress was being made. And given that this is a contract year for Alex Bowman, things didn't look great for Alex. But now Valvoline is gonna be sponsoring Bowman for the Daytona 500. That's a sexy paint scheme. Always love a good Valvoline scheme. And then some Chevrolet accessory partners, Adams Polishes, NOCO, and Truck Hero will also be on the car for a combined 26 races. Now all those paint schemes, not great. I mean, the black and gold might look cool on the track, but they basically just gave them all a generic paint scheme and just slapped their logo. It's almost like a custom paint scheme designer in NASCAR Heat 4. But this is great news for Alex Bowman and for Hendrick Motorsports. What it sounds like to me is Rick Hendrick flexing his big boy, big industry muscle over there. It sounds like a B2B partnership. Rick Hendrick owns a bunch of car dealerships across the country. He has a great deep partnership with Chevrolet, so he was able to tap into those resources, it sounds like, and get some money, get some logos on the hood of the car. So this is all great news. This is good for Alex Bowman because maybe this means Bowman now, maybe Hendrick can commit to him long term if Bowman's able to consistently run well this year. So this could be good news for Alex Bowman, but this is definitely good news for that race team, keeping their cars fully funded. So that's pretty awesome. I talked about that a little bit more, but we've got to move on. I have a lot of things to cover in today's episode. Really quick, NASCAR had also announced yesterday that they're going to be running the 14-turn course layout for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course when the Xfinity Series heads there in July. Remember, Matt Benedetto tested an Xfinity car on that track. Was it last week? I think it was last week. I'm losing track at this point. Tested a couple different configurations. NASCAR is going with the 14-turn configuration. Again, that's just going to be for the Xfinity race in July. The Cup race, the Brickyard 400, will still be on the normal oval rectangle layout. So this is just a test for the Xfinity series, but it should be a lot of fun. I've seen a lot of comments from Xfinity drivers, just from NASCAR drivers in general, or race car drivers in general at least, that sound optimistic that this is going to be a wild race. Could be a messy race, for sure. Probably be a little messy at times, but this could be a really fun race. So I'm very excited. I said this last week, I think, but I'm very excited. I'm the most excited I've been for an Indianapolis NASCAR weekend as I've been in a long, long time. So I guess NASCAR did something right there. Also, really quick, I teased this at the beginning of the episode. Jeff Hammond, you guys might know him. He's at the Hollywood Hotel, Fox booth. You know, he's been working alongside Chris Myers, working with Darrell Waltrip, Michael Waltrip. He's been on the Fox broadcast team for 2 decades almost now. But Jeff Hammond, for those of you younger fans out there may not know this, he used to be a great NASCAR crew chief as well. He won a couple championships crew chiefing for Darrell Waltrip in the mid 80s. And yesterday it was announced out of nowhere that he will be crew chiefing Clay Greenfield for 8 races in the NASCAR Gander Truck Series this year. It's the first time Jeff has crew chiefed anything in NASCAR since the year 2000. This comes as a total surprise, but any old school fans out there, you know, Jeff Hammond has a long, illustrious history. He's won a lot of races atop the pit box. You know, the Clay Greenfield truck, I don't know, is going to be the best truck in the field. I don't know, he might have his work cut out for him there, but it's only an 8-race deal, and for nostalgic purposes, this is kind of cool to see. It's just kind of fun. Didn't expect it, but there you go. Jeff Hammond. Hollywood Jeff. All right, now I have a couple slightly bigger stories, I'd say, that I want to spend most of this episode talking about. We'll go and start with Daniel Suarez. I talked about it over a week ago. It was initially reported like almost 2 weeks ago that Suarez was going to be going to Gaunt Brothers Racing in the 96 car. I talked about it then. It was pretty much a done deal at that point, but it was not officially made official until yesterday, where Daniel Suarez did a press conference. The owners of Gaunt Brothers Racing did a press conference, all introducing each other. Daniel Suarez is back with Toyota. He'll be in the 96 car full-time this year. This is the first year in Gaunt Brothers Racing history that they will be attempting to run full-time in the NASCAR Cup Series. Now, that I say attempt, I say attempt because they do not have a charter. This team is not one of the 36 chartered teams, which means every week they're going to have to qualify into the race on speed. Most weeks this probably won't be an issue because NASCAR Cup Series runs 40 car fields. A lot of weeks we only get about 40 cars to the race, so more than likely they'll be able to race their way into the vast majority of races this year, but most notably the Daytona 500. I don't know how many cars are entered this year, but usually we get around 42, 43, maybe more than that, which means there's a possibility that Daniel Suarez and the 96 team could miss out the Daytona 500, but we'll wait and see. Anyway, Suarez, yes, was officially announced yesterday as the driver of the 96. He's reunited with Toyota once again. Coca-Cola and CommScope will both be sponsors for him this year. CommScope is the parent company that owns Aris, Ruckus, the same companies that have been sponsoring Suarez his entire career pretty much in NASCAR. So I talked about how Gaunt Brothers Racing is still a very new team. They've only been around since 2017 and they have not run a full-time schedule yet any of those years. So this is a very new, a very fresh organization. Let's be honest here, Daniel Suarez is getting a downgrade. He is not going to be in as good of equipment as he was in with Stewart-Haas Racing, and definitely not as good of equipment as he was in with Joe Gibbs Racing. So this is the worst Cup Series car Daniel Suarez has driven. So keep everyone's, I'm only saying, I'm not sitting there trying to trash Gaunt Brothers Racing. I think what they're trying to do is very admirable, and I'll go into some details here in a second. It may not be as bad as people initially think, but let's not kid ourselves here. This is the worst car Daniel Suarez has driven in the Cup Series to this point, and so I just want to make sure people's expectations are in line here. If Suarez runs 25th at each week, that's honestly not a horrible run in my opinion. People are going to look at it as it's bad, he's continuing to struggle, but 25th in this car is probably pretty reasonable. So keep everyone's expectations in check here. Daniel Suarez said yesterday that he would not have gone to this team if he didn't see potential long-term success with them. Now, that's what I want to get to next. Gaunt Brothers Racing is a Toyota team. They run Toyota Camry race cars. However, in recent years, they don't get quite the same level of support that obviously Joe Gibbs Racing gets, or especially last year, the same support that Levine Family Racing gets. And this year's not going to be too different. Now, Gaunt Brothers Racing will get their engines from TRD. They will get some technical data from TRD, from Toyota, that will be shared amongst all the Toyota teams. But as far as building their own race cars, getting their own cars, they're on their own. They're not getting, they're not going to have a technical alliance with Joe Gibbs Racing, so they're not going to have the same resources that even Levine Family Racing has been getting. They are pretty much on their own, but there is room to grow there. Toyota has continued to kind of grow its operation. They aligned with Furniture Row for years. That was extremely successful, and then when that team, they kind of put that team out of business, they moved over and they've been aligning themselves with Levine Family Racing. This year in 2020, that 95 car is probably going to be a lot better than it was last year. So Toyota is willing to expand its partnership to teams who are interested in it, and it sounds like Gaunt Brothers with Daniel Suarez, that could be a real possibility in the not so distant future. So everyone needs to keep their expectations in line here. This Gaunt Brothers car is not gonna be great. It's not a playoff car. It's probably not gonna contend for any wins, except maybe on the super speedway tracks. Maybe you could sneak up there, I guess. Yes, they'll have TRD engines, but they will not be getting the same technical support that Joe Gibbs Racing is getting. They're not gonna get anything from Joe Gibbs Racing. They're not gonna get anything from Levine Family Racing. They are virtually on their own. I even saw a report yesterday that they don't even have enough cars right now for the second half of the season. They still need to go out and get more race cars to be able to compete this entire year. That's what I've heard. So it's an uphill battle for this team for sure, but here's what some of the people had to say about this partnership. It's interesting how this came together. Daniel Suarez and David Wilson over at TRD both made it sound like Suarez's good relationship with Toyota is what really drove this deal to happening. This tweet here from Chris Knight says, Marty Gaunt, one of the owners of Gaunt Brothers Racing, says without Toyota and TRD support, 2020 NASCAR Cup Series season with Daniel Suarez would not be possible. I mentioned what David Wilson was talking about. Daniel Suarez, ever since he left Toyota at the end of the 2018 season, apparently his relationship was still really strong with the manufacturer. Even when he was with Stewart-Haas last year, he still kept in touch with a lot of people over at Toyota. And this is why they say, don't burn your bridges here. Because without that strong relationship, obviously without some of the money that Suarez is bringing as well from Coca-Cola, from Aris, etc., without all those things combined, this probably doesn't happen, and Suarez is probably out of the Cup Series. Suarez had a quote yesterday that said he was having a hard time sleeping for months until the last couple weeks when he knew this deal was coming together, because nothing was happening. It sounded like he was really in just kind of NASCAR purgatory. He had a deal possibly for the Xfinity Series with RCR, but he wanted to stay in Cup. His sponsors really wanted him to stay in Cup, and ultimately, that prevailed, that won out, but very interesting there. Remember, it came as a shock to Daniel Suarez at the end of last season when late one night, Tony Stewart gave him a call and told him that he was not gonna be in the 41 car this year. That was a shock to Daniel Suarez. Suarez kind of talked about that in a quote yesterday. He said, Truex, a great driver, came to take the JGR spot, and then with Cole Custer and the relationship he had with Gene, there was no money that could have changed any of those situations. It's a difficult situation to be in, but I believe good things happen to good people. Interesting, it sounds like Daniel Suarez, now keep in mind, this day and age in NASCAR, if you bring a lot of your own funding, a lot of your own sponsorship, that is important to getting a ride in NASCAR today. It always has been, but it's especially important today. It sounds like Daniel Suarez had the money to stay in the 41 car, and Stewart-Haas Racing opted instead to go with their guy, their boy, Cole Custer. That's probably why this was such a shock to Suarez. He's grown up in a NASCAR where if you have the funding, you get the ride. And didn't work out this way. I don't blame Suarez for feeling kind of blindsided there. I think Daniel Suarez is still a solid driver. I don't think he was good enough to warrant staying in championship level equipment for another year, but Suarez is still a solid enough driver. He is a Cup Series driver, not a great Cup Series, but he is a Cup Series driver. You put him back down in the Xfinity Series, he's gonna win a bunch of races, and he's gonna be a championship contender. He's graduated from that series. He's a Cup guy, just not a top Cup guy. So that's why him leaving SHR, not staying with JGR, makes sense, because those are top Cup teams, and he's not a top Cup guy. But yeah, it sounds like he was blindsided because he had the money, and Stewart-Haas Racing said no. Keep in mind, Cole Custer, he has a strong relationship with Gene Haas. His father is involved with the company, so I'm sure there was favoritism there. But Cole Custer's had an incredible Xfinity season the year before, so them promoting Cole Custer, I don't have a problem with that either. Just, I guess Suarez was shocked that he was the guy on the short end of the stick there, but thought it was pretty interesting to hear how this whole deal came together. Things happen fast in NASCAR these days. But when it's all said and done, Daniel Suarez will be in the Cup Series, hopefully full-time this year. The plan is to run full-time. They will not be running in the Clash. Daniel Suarez technically was qualified for the Clash this year, but they are not going to run that race. They're going to focus their attention on getting ready to qualify for the Daytona 500. So Suarez fans, Daniel's amigos, rejoice. He's back, and he will be racing in the Cup Series this year. So that's going to be fun. That's cool. Last thing I want to talk about in this episode, NASCAR made another, not rule change, a format change, I should say, for this coming Cup Series season. Stage racing is still here, it's still a thing, but they're now changing the lengths of stages 1, 2, and 3. Traditionally, the last few years since they've had stage racing, stage 1 and 2 are usually pretty short, and then stage 3 is usually significantly longer. In 2020, that is different. NASCAR is still sticking with 3 stages for every race, except I think the Coke 600, that's still gonna be 4 stages traditionally. But now those 3 stages at most tracks are gonna be more even in length. They didn't offer too many specifics. I think for Daytona 500, it's gonna be 65, 65, and then 70 laps. And that's kind of how it's gonna be at most races this year. Stages 1, 2, and 3 are gonna be kind of even in length. It's almost like the race will be divided into thirds, stage points, and everything is gonna work the same way it's always worked. The other interesting detail here is that NASCAR will once again be making the halfway point of the race the point where the race becomes official. And this comes into play, especially with rain delays and rainouts. The last couple of years, a race was not official until the end of stage 2, and sometimes this end of stage 2 was more than halfway through the race. NASCAR is doing away with that rule, and now once again, the race is official at the halfway point. So that's, I guess, familiar to most NASCAR fans. That's how it was for years. Now, it was widely reported yesterday by many within the NASCAR media sphere that NASCAR was seriously considering adding a 4th stage to every single race on the Cup Series season this year. But they decided against it for now and decided they'd rather wait and see how the next-gen car progresses. Also, brief sidetrack, in a couple months, NASCAR is planning on testing 2 next-gen cars on track together for the first time, and I believe in August they're going to try and test a few more next-gen cars on track together. So that was also announced the other day. I forgot to mention that, but sidetrack there. Next-gen car testing is progressing, but this report of NASCAR considering a 4th stage, and that's something that I guess in theory we could possibly see in 2021 or 2022, that's evoked quite a range of opinions and emotions, I'd say. What it means to me is that NASCAR is clearly focusing on restarts. I mean, obviously with this 2019 and now 2020 intermediate package, the restarts are a lot of fun. You get 3 4-wide racings, beating and banging off each other, multiple passes for the lead. The first 10 laps into a run at pretty much every 1.5 or 2-mile track this last year was a lot of fun. And it sounds like NASCAR is really bent on exploiting that advantage that they have. They know that restarts are fun. I mean, let's be honest, when you go to a NASCAR race, the crowd stands up right before restart. Crowd doesn't really stand up much else during the race. If there's a wreck, the crowd will stand up. If it's like down to the wire, last 5 laps, and there's 2 guys battling for the win, crowd will sometimes stand up. But the only time a NASCAR crowd in the bleachers stands up is before and during a restart. Restarts are the most entertaining part of a race, and NASCAR wants to make their races more watchable, wants to make their races more entertaining without completely destroying the integrity of the competition. Because yes, while adding a 4th stage manipulates the race and that there's just a caution for the sake of there being a caution, you know, still, best drivers will have the best track position on the restart, and if you're good at restarts, you'll still probably win the race or have a good finish. So it's not entirely destroying the integrity of the sport, it's just, once again, manipulating the race in a way that a lot of fans are probably uncomfortable with. So I'll give you guys my opinion on this here. I like stage racing a lot. You guys know I like stage racing. Initially, I liked stage racing because I liked that it rewarded consistency throughout a race. One thing I hated is if, say, you led 300 laps in a race and then blew a tire or got wrecked by a lap car with 5 to go. And now instead of getting, you know, max points or getting a lot of points, you get no points because you'd finish like last place. I like that stage racing now rewards consistency throughout a race. So if you have a really fast car, you qualify up front, you finish second in stage 1, third in stage 2, you get a lot of important points there. You might still wreck out or have a mechanical failure in stage 3, but at least it's not a complete wash of a day. You still are rewarded for being so fast and so good earlier on in the race. I do like that stage racing rewards consistency throughout an entire event. That was when I first heard about stage racing a few years back, when I first introduced it, that was where my head initially went, and I was really excited about that. I really like that change. The secondary effect of stage racing is that it allows for more restarts, and I like restarts. Like I said, most fans like restarts. Think about it. You want to be watching restarts. Everyone watches restarts. Everyone gets excited for restarts. No one is sitting on the edge of their seat, you know, 40 laps into a green flag run when everyone's strung out. There are some tracks, I've said this before, where I wish they didn't throw the caution at the end of stages. I think at super speedways, you don't need to throw the caution at the end of stages. I think at many road courses, they should probably look at changing that rule, because otherwise it's just strategy gets really screwy at road courses and it's kind of a mess. But at most tracks, especially most of the traditional ovals, I like that they throw a caution. I like that it kind of breaks up a little bit. It also allows NASCAR to run most of their commercials during these caution breaks, so they're not necessarily having to break up the green flag action with as many commercial breaks. So I think that's a win for the fans as well. But now, yeah, I've said a lot of good things about stage racing, because you guys know me. If you've watched this show for any significant amount of time, you know that I like stage racing a lot. That's one of my favorite changes, actually, that NASCAR has made in recent years. I know people will disagree with me on that one, but that's just my stance. You know, the playoffs are fine, certain rule changes are fine, but I like stage racing a lot. But I will say, in regards to this rule change, switching it up to thirds instead of, you know, 1, 2, and then 3, I'm not sure how I feel about this, because I do like that, you know, having a longer third stage does allow for certain different strategy plays. It allows for a green flag run, a longer green flag run, to actually happen. It might not happen. There might still be wrecks that cause other cautions and things like that, but it allows for a long green flag run to potentially happen. With NASCAR now changing that and going to kind of even length stages, most races, I feel like you're not going to have as many of those types of, you know, you're really not going to have any super long green flag runs. It basically ensures that you're never going to have a green flag run that lasts more than maybe an hour. So there's that. I'll reserve my judgment for the most part right now, because I haven't actually seen it in action. I'll have to wait and see how it actually plays out in the flow of the race. But at first, I don't think this is a necessary change, and I'm not sure I'm in favor of this change. But I'll wait and see on that one. Now, I know for sure that I'm not a fan of NASCAR adding a 4th stage. I like restarts. Like I said, all that stuff I just said is still very much true, but I think 4 stages, it becomes where do we draw the line is really where I'm starting to go here. I like restarts a lot, but I don't want NASCAR to become a sport that's just, you know, 10 30 lap shootouts. Like the whole race is just 10 different 30 laps. I don't want that to become the race. I don't want there to be cautions every, you know, 5 minutes. I don't want the whole race to just be restarts. I do still like traditional old school long green flag racing, who can save the tires the best, who can, you know, I like to see that type of racing too. I do like that style of NASCAR as well, that type of NASCAR. 3 stages made a lot of sense. 4 stages would probably still work, but it's just a slippery slope at this point. I don't like NASCAR thinking that they can just keep tacking on extra stages, because at some point, maybe 4, maybe 5, maybe 6, at some point it will become overbearing. And I think someone needs to kind of draw that line with NASCAR and say, no, you had it right the first time. There is such a thing as too much in this case, and I think someone's got to let NASCAR know that. I'm worried maybe 4 stages would be great. You never know. Maybe it would be awesome, but I'm hesitant. I definitely don't want to see NASCAR dive completely down this path, but we'll have to wait and see. You know, if they are going to make these changes, it's going to come in 2021. It's not going to happen this year, but we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens. I don't know. I'm not super excited about that change, or the evening the stages change. Not an exciting change in my opinion, but we'll have to wait and see. I'll reserve my judgment. Haven't seen it in action yet, but it's I'm not in favor of it right now. Let me put it that way. I'm sure you guys will have a lot of strong opinions about these proposals, but yeah, that's basically all I have for this episode. A lot of stuff that I want to talk about, a lot of things to discuss, kind of bounced all over the map in this episode, but I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you're new. We do this type of stuff all throughout the week, every week, throughout the entire year. So subscribe if you like watching cars go in circles. We like talking about cars going in circles, so you're in the right place. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Big thank you, of course, to my Patreon supporters. The grooviest gang of race fans on the planet, I must say. Thank you guys a ton for the support. If you also want to support the show, support the channel, you can check out that top link down in the description. I got plans to go to a few races here this year, early on in the season. I got some plans to go to some races. I'll be doing a lot of video content there. Also have a special guest planned to come on the show next week, so which should be a lot of fun. So if you want to continue to support me, support the show, go check out that top link down below. Thanks a ton though to my incredible Patreon supporters. Could not do this show without your support. We'll be back, of course, later this week with another video. Daytona is just around the corner, less than a week and a half until the Clash. ARCA is that first weekend. That's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm really excited for that ARCA race. So there's a lot to be excited about. Got some season preview videos in the works that'll be up in the next few days, next week or so, so keep an eye out. And I will see you guys again very, very soon. Have a great rest of your week, everybody.